Robert Maxwell was very close to the Eastern Bloc. He had a very close relationship with intelligence figures in the KGB and also Bulgaria. He had a relationship with British intelligence and Israeli intelligence. And it's sort of like a meta scandal. You're looking at someone who really had, I guess, for lack of a better metaphor, had his hands in a lot of pies, right?
Yeah, right.
So he was sort of at the center of a lot of scandals, but not necessarily at the top, right? I think he was more maybe middle management in a sense, but
we have to start with Jeffrey Epstein, because the way you have written about him, it connects to a whole world of corruption.
Yeah.
Is he kind of the Rosetta Stone?
Yeah, I think it's sort of like a meta scandal. You're looking at someone who really had, I guess, for lack of a better metaphor, had his hands in a lot of pies, right?
Yeah, right.
So he was sort of at the center of a lot of scandals, but not necessarily at the top, right? I think he was more maybe middle management in a sense, but very central to a lot of these things going on, that sort of these networks in which he inhabits are involved in, numerous acts of corruption simultaneously.
Yeah.
And he, is there involved in many of them, but not necessarily at the top level, right?
So was he a spy?
I think he definitely had intelligence connections, and there's a lot, to suggest that was the case. I think one of the earliest hints we heard of that was having a Secretary of Labor, Alex Acosta, under Trump, say that one of the reasons he was pressured into giving Epstein a sweetheart deal during his first arrest in Florida was because he had been told by unspecified actors that Epstein belonged to intelligence. But that's kind of, what exactly does that mean? Was he an asset? Was he on the payroll? Which intelligence agency? Multiple intelligence agencies?
Right.
When you have his close association with someone like Ghislaine Maxwell in the mix, and her father had affiliations with numerous intelligence agencies, it really is an open question.
He was kind of a bad guy. I'm reading your work about him, and explain who he was.
So Robert Maxwell was involved in many things, but he definitely played a major role in undermining U.S. national security by selling bug software to nuclear laboratories in the United States. And this was directly facilitated by well-known statesmen in U.S. history, like Henry Kissinger, for example. And a lot of the people, I think, that enabled him, at least on the U.S. side, tend to be those that favor global governance and, they kind of don't want the U.S. to have that kind of monopoly on power.
Because all of his family, they were killed in the Holocaust, right?
Right.
And so he's in the West, England. He survives, becomes kind of William Randolph Hearst of England.
Yeah, media mogul, sure.
Yeah. And then betrays the West. And that's not because he was on the other, he wasn't on the Soviet side. He was on a global government side?
Well, I think you have to look at this network, and they've evolved over time, right? Robert Maxwell was very close to the Eastern Bloc. He had a very close relationship with intelligence figures in the KGB and also Bulgaria. He had a relationship with British intelligence and Israeli intelligence, and was involved in aspects of what later became known as Iran-Contra, which of course involves aspects of U.S. intelligence. So, I mean, he had his hands in everywhere and everything. And I think ultimately people like him are interested in any deal they can make to advance their money and their power and their influence, they'll take it. So Robert Maxwell was very interested in having his family be like the Kennedy family, a political power dynasty. And that's part of why he started moving into New York City around, just a year or two before he ended up dying. And Ghislaine Maxwell was sent to New York sort of to be his emissary.
Wow. This is just...
There's a lot to discuss.
There's a lot to discuss here on just this, because this goes to the deep state, or you call it deep politics. And it's been going on for a long time, but people, I don't think, realize that, the Bourne Identity, those Jason Bourne movies, that is a reflection of some people's real lives. I mean, it's a totally fictitious story, but those things do go on. And I tell you, I have felt for a long time with the NSA, listening to everybody's phone calls. If you're important in Washington, They're going to do everything they can
To manage you.
to manage you.
Yeah.
So if you're not rock solid in who you are and what right and wrong really is, they got you.
Yeah. But even they don't, today, I think we've moved away from the type of model that Epstein used for sexual blackmail. It's an era of electronic blackmail, and you don't even have to do anything wrong. They can just plant it on your devices and play gotcha that way. So it's really an unprecedented situation. And a lot of these intelligence agencies, as I note in the book, really for decades have been totally out of control.